This is my little boy.
A parent's decade-long battle
Sorry.
to save a son the world believes is a terrorist.
Can I not even just see my mum's picture?
Our search
Any Canadians here?
takes us to the front line
Look out! Look how close that came.
of a ticking time bomb. These soldiers are on the hunt for terrorists. In recent raids, they've seized stockpiles of ISIS assault weapons, ammo, and suicide vests. These are the guys who helped kill ISIS's brutal caliphate in Iraq and here in Syria back in 2019. And they are yet again on the front line, this time trying to quash down the numerous sleeper cells that still exist in this region. And those sleeper cells have tentacles that spread around the world, including in Canada. When these Kurdish soldiers, backed by a US-led coalition that included Canada, declared victory over ISIS 5 years ago, they rounded up 10,000 suspected militants, many of them foreigners, some of them Canadian, and tossed them in makeshift jails. They've been there ever since, in conditions called inhumane by human rights groups and a ticking time bomb by counter-terrorism experts. Because an underground network of militants is trying to free them, a ready-made ISIS army. While the soldiers hunt ISIS, I'm on a different mission, searching for one of the Canadian prisoners named Jack Letts.
North Alberta. He left his home for Edmonton.
That little blonde boy came to the heart of ISIS territory as a teenager. A single decision that's triggered a political firestorm and raises questions. What is Canada's responsibility? And how far would you go to save your son? Far from Syria, this idyllic farm in rural England. Where Jack's Canadian father, John, an organic farmer, is developing seeds that withstand climate change. It looks like a peaceful life. It's not.
It's a limbo. Not even knowing whether your child is even alive. This is a child you love and you've nurtured and you held against you for years, and you can't protect him as a father. You know, a father can't protect his own child is a really painful and difficult feeling.
John hasn't seen his son since he was 18. He's now 29. Jack Letts has spent 7.5 years in prison, somewhere in Syria. No one knows exactly where. Trapped in a legal no man's land. Held without charge, Jack is serving a sentence with no end.
I wake up thinking, well, I've had a good night's sleep. Jack's lying on a cement floor suffering. I eat breakfast and he doesn't. I have a hot shower, I feel guilty. I have a cup of coffee, I feel guilty. You can't live with that.
Jack was born and grew up here in Oxford, England. A dual citizen, his dad Canadian and his mother Sally British.
He liked, art and music and sports, team sports. He was always in a sort of quite the loud, popular crowd.
When did you notice that there were some issues that were arising?
It was when he was about 14 that he was assessed as being very high on the scale for OCD. He was having to do everything in rituals, and it started off with numbers of 4, and then in 8, and then when it was quite bad. He had to do everything 16 times.
Jack's compulsions turned to a fixation on Islam, visiting local mosques in Oxford, teaching himself Arabic, and then at the age of 16, converting.
Your gut reaction, Sally, when Jack comes to you and says, "I'm converting to Islam"?
It's very different for our family. We're not religious in the family at all. He just said it when he was walking out the door once, and I said, "You can't just say I'm converting and walk out the door." And he said, "Well, okay, we can talk about it, but he's going to do it anyway."
The rituals of religion, Jack's therapist said, could be a good outlet for his obsessive-compulsive disorder. But 16-year-old Jack became obsessed with what was happening to his fellow Muslims a world away in Syria. In 2011, pro-democracy protesters tried to overthrow Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's brutal regime. The world watched in horror as tens of thousands were killed and detained. The predominantly Muslim country spiraled into a full-blown civil war.
He was talking about going to Syria to help, and we said, don't be silly, you're just going to get in the way, you're not going to be any help whatsoever. And he agreed with us at the time, and I think we thought that was the end of the story.
I really think he felt that if he didn't go and help, his OCD was compelling him to go to be a good Muslim, and he would go to hell. And he didn't want to go to hell.
This is our Khilafah in all its glory.
A then little-known group called ISIS was flooding the internet with sophisticated propaganda on just what a good Muslim should do.
We are the soldiers who stop the idols of nationalism.
The message, leave your country and join their battle for a new Islamic state in Syria and Iraq. Some 50,000 foreigners from more than 80 countries answered that call. In 2014, when Jack was 18, his parents let him travel to Kuwait for Arabic lessons. And then his mom got a call that changed their lives forever.
Can you tell me about the phone call?
I was at home on my own, and the phone rang, and it was Jack. We hadn't heard from him for a couple of weeks, and he said, "Mum, I'm in Syria." And so I started screaming at him, "What have you done? You're insane, you're going to get killed." And then the line went dead.
And I was terrified, just like her. We were both in complete panic mode.
That was a decade ago.
I just don't know what that's like to go to bed every night,
Yeah.
not knowing if your son is alive or dead.
All I can rely on is this sort of feeling that he's alive and that he's fighting, to stay alive.
Do I really think he's going to make it? I can't go there. Well, look, I need to be realistic. I'm not an idiot. I'm not a fool.
This is Raqqa, Syria, where Jack Letts came in 2014. His parents haven't seen him since. I'm here trying to track down the son they don't even know is still alive. They've recorded video messages just in case.
Don't give up hope. We aren't. We're still working on getting you out, and we'll see you soon. We love you. Take care, Jacko.
We love you, and we're waiting for you. And this nightmare will be over, Jacko. I promise you. It's not long now. Yeah. Until then, lots of love.
This is the neighborhood where we believe Jack once lived, up here in an apartment on the second floor. he'd send his terrified parents sporadic messages.
I said, like, Jack, what the hell are you doing?
His mom, Sally, asked him point blank, "Are you with ISIS?"
He said, there are loads of groups here. You don't understand what it's like here. He said he was in ISIS territory, but he said he was never a member of ISIS.
In 2015, after about a year in Syria, Jack messaged his parents asking for money. This surveillance video shows Sally in the blue coat at Western Union, wiring the equivalent of about 400 Canadian dollars. Meanwhile, news was breaking that Jack, a British-Canadian middle-class kid, had run away to join ISIS. The Sunday Times branded him Jihadi Jack with this photo of what appears to be an ISIS salute. Although his family points out it's a gesture he made long before he went to Syria. The Independent showed Jack's Facebook account with disturbing posts supporting terror attacks. He claims other people were using his account.
Do you leave any room for possibility in your mind that you don't know everything that happened in Syria and that he may have been a part of ISIS?
ISIS is a horrific organization. They've done absolutely horrific things, but not everybody who went to Syria was a member or did awful things.
In fact, in a flurry of texts in 2015, Jack told his parents he was actually on the run from ISIS. "If ISIS catch me, they'll kill me. They promised me that." Jack told them he'd become an enemy of the terror group for denouncing their ideology as un-Islamic. He said he needed money to escape their territory. Danger, real. I don't want to scare you, but there's real danger. I don't want to go into too much detail, but there's people here who want to kill me or imprison me. They don't know where I am.
If you get caught trying to escape, they kill you. Whether you might have gone there thinking this was a utopia and being misled, as many were. But once you're in, if you hate them and you want to escape, how do you get out?
You get out with money to pay a smuggler. From their home in Oxford, Sally made the fateful decision to try to send 2 more wire transfers to Jack, worth about 2,700 Canadian dollars. Those transfers were blocked, but led to a shocking series of events.
They arrest us for funding terrorism. I mean, you couldn't get it more ridiculous.
Sally and John's arrest in 2016 on 3 charges of funding terrorism made headlines. In interviews with police broadcast on British media, John insisted the money was to help Jack escape ISIS territory.
Sally was very clear in saying, like, is this being used to get out? And he said, yes, Mom. You know, this is to get out. I am not with the state. You know, I'm not with them. I disagree with their creed.
In the matter of R versus Sally Lane and John Letts.
The allegation against them, that there was reasonable cause to suspect that the money would or might be used for the purpose of terrorism.
I'll be damned if I was not going to help my son. So you can throw anything you want at me.
Outside the court, a small group gathered to support John and Sally, who faced up to 13 years in prison.
I thought, if I'm in jail, that means who's going to fight for Jack? We were trying to save Jack's life, and they were trying not to let us.
The case dragged on for 3 long years, and the jury took almost 20 hours to reach a verdict.
John Letts and Sally Lane walked from the Old Bailey, found guilty on a charge of funding terrorism.
Sally and John received a 15-month suspended sentence, no jail time. They had their freedom, but their son no longer had his. In 2017, trying to flee Syria with a group of refugees, Jack, with both British and Canadian citizenship, was captured by US-backed Kurdish forces and imprisoned with other suspected ISIS members.
The last voice message I had from him was when he was first captured in July 2017. So he thought he was going to be home in a week. Authorities said that they were talking to Britain, that he'll be home in a week.
That was 7.5 years ago.
Sorry. Sorry.
The battle to get Jack home has been a long and lonely one. Fought in both countries where Jack has citizenship. They've held hunger strikes in the UK and Canada.
Enough is enough. We cannot endure this situation any longer.
There have been petitions and small protests. But neither country wants anything to do with their son. In 2019, Sally and John's all-consuming fight was dealt a major blow. Britain decided to strip his citizenship, and what to do with Jack Letts became a Canada-only problem.
His first Canadian passport, which I kept. Look at that. He was so happy when he became a Canadian. That's funny contrast. There he's becoming a Canadian and so happily, and here he's being deprived of British citizenship. We didn't know it was happening. I mean, just, you're banished from the UK.
Canada is now the only hope for John and Sally. She's moved to Ottawa alone to be closer to the fight to repatriate her son.
John and I are now divorced because we've obviously coped with the situation in very different ways.
John still lives at the farm outside London, England.
Sally lives in Canada, I live here. I'm in a weird limbo. I'm not really living.
We have transcripts and audio recordings that show Canada initially appeared ready to help. A Canadian consular official called Jack 10 months after he was detained in 2017. The Global Affairs employee tells him, "We are working on your case. We will keep trying to find a solution. We have the intention to try and help you." He writes, "Please get me out of this place. I want to come to Canada." And then Jack sends an audio message, one of the last times his parents have heard their son's voice.
Tell my mum I'm sorry. Tell my dad I'm sorry. Tell them if I ever get out of this place, I'm going to try and be a better person. I'm going to try and set right what I did wrong.
We don't know the extent of what Jack did wrong. There is no legal system for foreigners in Syria, and so he's not been charged or convicted of any crime.
Where's the evidence? Bring it forward. Put him on trial. How can you condemn someone without even having a trial? It's a witch trial.
What do you think Jack's crime is?
I think his crime is being a stupid teenager. I have been given no evidence to the contrary.
Traveling to ISIS-controlled Syria at that time was in itself a crime. But leaving him there, according to this 2018 RCMP briefing, violated his charter rights. Even if a Canadian engaged in terrorist activity abroad, the government of Canada must facilitate their return to Canada.
I wouldn't lift a finger to try to get Jihadi Jack back to Canada. He's in prison now. That's where he should stay.
Then opposition leader Andrew Scheer in 2019, reacting to news that Canada was working to bring an accused ISIS member back to this country. Both John and Sally say all they're fighting for is that their son be brought to Canada, even if it means he goes on trial.
I'd be perfectly happy if he was tried in Canada. It's not as if there isn't a process for this. I mean, I think it's ironic that families are calling for trials, not governments.
I've always said, if my son has done something wrong, he should pay the price. I'll be the first to stand up to condemn him.
This is not just about Jack Letts. At least 8 other Canadian men have essentially been banished by the Canadian government in what an independent United Nations expert describes as a cradle-to-grave cycle of indefinite, arbitrary detention. With zero public or political will to repatriate them, the families of some of those detainees turned to the Canadian courts in 2023, and they won.
4 Canadian men jailed overseas in dire conditions without a charge or a trial must be brought home. That's the order from a federal court judge.
The judge wrote, notably, the government does not allege any of the applicants engaged in or assisted in terrorist activities.
When that ruling came out, did you think, oh my God, Jack's coming home?
Yeah, we really did, and we were ecstatic. I got messages from all over the world from people saying, you know, this is it, fantastic. We were elated.
That elation lasted just months. The government won on appeal with a ruling that Canada is not obligated by law to repatriate the men. The appeal court specifically said, though, that its ruling should not discourage the government from making efforts on their own to repatriate the men. But the government has taken no steps to bring them home.
The Canadians haven't done what's right for Jack.
British human rights lawyer Tayeb Ali represented Sally and John at their terrorism trial all those years ago. He's technically Jack's lawyer, although he's never been given access to his client.
Canadians will hear this story and say, you know what? He decided to go to Syria, and we don't want him back. Let him rot there.
And there is some merit in that until it's your son. When do our values allow us to say, I'm going to arrest them, detain them, and keep them in detention indefinitely without evidence, because I think that person has committed a crime? Isn't that the system we've created?
Being considered innocent until proven guilty, the right to a trial, the right to justice. If there's any hope in the world where something like this still survives, it is probably Canada.
Meanwhile, in Syria, our search for Jack Letts has turned into a wild goose chase. We've been told he's in one of the prisons for ISIS suspects, but his guards appear to have lost him. Sally's biggest fear is that he's dead, and she hasn't been told.
I know 3 European families who have found out over a year later that their loved one died. I mean, that does scare me, that, you know, you can be living thinking that he's alive and he isn't.
Syria's civil war has cleaved this country. The red area is still under the thumb of dictator Bashar al-Assad, backed by Iran and Russia. We've been traveling through the yellow region, controlled by the Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, which is backed by the U.S.
Mustafa to Simon. So we are getting to the checkpoint.
Field producer Mustafa Al-Ali is with us in one vehicle.
Yes, Simon, do you have any info about that?
In the other, our security, led by former British soldier Simon Roughton.
It's a bad area, especially this road, but it's safer than the other road.
Kurdish soldiers oversee 29 makeshift prisons that hold 10,000 suspected ISIS members, including Jack Letts. For a week, we've been hounding them to live up to their promise to let us interview him. But they haven't been able to find him. And then, on our 8th day, a breakthrough.
What did? Hush.
Mustafa gets a call. They have found Jack Letts in the labyrinth of the prison system in northeast Syria. We're following a car that's leading us to the prison where Jack Letts is. It pretty much disappeared off the face of the earth. We couldn't figure out where he was, whether he was alive, what prison he was in, and we've just learned that he's in Raqqa. We have to turn our camera off as we get closer to the prison, and can only turn it on again here where cameraman Jerry Vino is setting up his equipment in a soundproof interrogation room. With black padded walls, it's in the basement of a prison that houses thousands of foreign ISIS suspects. They've never been charged, tried, or convicted. We're not allowed to shoot this, but outside this door, Jack is being led down the corridor, handcuffed and blindfolded. The masked guard sits a bewildered and barefoot Jack down in our makeshift studio.
Should I sit down?
My name's Avery Haines, and I'm from Canada. Yeah. That's good for you.
Why aren't you wearing shoes? With his guards looming behind him, Jack can't speak freely. Are they hurting you? Are they hurting you?
I have a kidney problem.
And are you getting treatment for it?
Sorry.
Okay. Were you made aware that I was coming to see you, or did you know why you were brought here? I don't know how much control you have in even sitting in that chair. From the sounds of it, you were kind of brought here, so I just want to make sure that you're okay talking to me.
I want to speak to you. It's a nice difference.
His voice drops to a whisper.
I wish I could speak outside of prison. It would be different.
I messaged your mom and dad just an hour ago, and I told them that we found you and that we'll be talking.
Sorry. I just, as soon as he mentioned my mum, I saw her in a dream a few days ago. Actually, it wasn't a few days ago. I think it was today. Hold on. It was today. It was silly, but it was good to see her face. I'll try and pull myself together a bit. This is ridiculous.
Over the course of a one-hour interview, Jack at times struggles with his English. He's been gone so long, he's losing his mother tongue.
I haven't spoken English in years. In years.
Jack explains what drove him to Syria a decade ago.
I was completely, how do I say this in English? Obsessed. Completely obsessed with what was happening in Syria. I would spend hours on YouTube seeing people blown to pieces and feeling like I'm sitting in a 3-story house on a computer. I felt like I was a hypocrite. I felt like I was a horrible person.
But how does it go from wanting to help people in Syria to joining ISIS?
When I was in England, I didn't actually have an intention of joining ISIS at all. And this is where naivety played its role. I used to speak to them and kick. They gave me this impression that ISIS is not something bad. It's not what people portrayed them to be in the media. That it's all lies. I know it sounds ridiculous, ISIS being who ISIS are, but they said they're the only people who are really fighting for Syrians.
Jack says once he arrived in Syria, he quickly learned that was a lie.
But I thought they were the right thing at the beginning, to be honest. As soon as I got there, I realized they weren't. And I said, I'm not going to pledge allegiance, which is why I left them straight away, which led to them putting me in prison 3 times and almost killing me.
Jack claims he became an enemy of ISIS inside their territory, that he was repeatedly jailed in places like this. I visited one of the many makeshift prisons ISIS created to torture non-believers and those who tried to escape their territory. I want to show you something that I found over here. The English writing, evidence that ISIS would bring foreigners here. It's just eerie to be in here. It's so claustrophobic. This is the size of one cell, and the people who were brought in here generally did not make it out of here alive. When you talk about being imprisoned by ISIS, it's hard for anyone to believe, knowing their brutality, that you were standing up to ISIS in Raqqa saying, I'm not buying what you're selling. I don't want to be a part of your group.
I was opposed to everything. I have, without exaggerating, more than 20 of my close friends were killed by ISIS. It's amazing they didn't kill me. And they told me they were going to kill me, and they didn't.
In previous interviews, Jack has admitted to joining ISIS, even that he was prepared to carry out a suicide attack. But he claims he was under duress. Now he says he wants to set the record straight.
Was I an ISIS member? No. There's a lot of things I said before you. I don't know how I can say this. A lot of things I said a long time ago because I was scared. If that makes sense. I can't say everything because I'm still in prison. Maybe it will be the last opportunity I can to get this truth across. I don't know.
People will hear your story and they will say, let him rot in a jail in Syria.
At least let me rot in a prison in Canada. Maybe I can see my mum once in a year.
You recognize that if you're brought to Canada, you will likely face charges.
I have no problem to go back to Canada now and they put me in prison for 100 years and I die in prison, no problem. I have no problem if Canada wants to put me in prison.
5 minutes, guys, if that's okay with you.
Well, what?
5 minutes for the electricity to be back.
Okay, no. I asked the guards if I can show Jack the video messages from his parents. Okay. They refuse.
Can I not even just see my mum's picture?
Can you please ask our friend here if there's any way I could just show a screenshot of Jack's mom and dad?
A picture, only a picture?
It's only a picture.
Okay, a picture is fine.
Okay, give me 1 second.
But not the video.
No, I won't.
There's your dad. Oh. He looks like a cowboy. Wow. Wow, his beard's gone grey.
And there's your mom.
She looks old as well.
I think they're taking you back.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Whenever you want to come again.
Okay.
It's nice to speak English after so long. Thank you.
Jack will be taken back to a cell that he shares with dozens of other accused ISIS members from all over the world. Amnesty International has described the conditions in these prisons as inhumane, rife with disease, and allegations of torture. It's not just humanitarians calling on countries to repatriate their citizens. The U.S. government and counter-terrorism experts warn that leaving them here creates a global security threat.
ISIS continues to look for new opportunities to replenish its ranks by trying to free these thousands of detained fighters.
This is the largest and highest security prison in northeast Syria. One of 29 housing foreign suspected ISIS members. There are 4,000 prisoners here, most of them foreigners. Not one of them has been charged or stood trial for their alleged crimes. We've been given rare access to Panorama Prison.
Hello. Does anyone speak English?
We're only allowed to look into 2 cells. This cell is all Iraqis. It's strangely silent. Prisoners pace the length of the cell, including this double amputee. Then I'm led to cell number 6.
Hello. Do you speak English?
A British medical student named Ibrahim Agid comes to speak to me through the bars. He's been here for 5.5 years without charge.
You know, there's a real concern about so many people being in a cell with radicalization.
Of course, yeah, there's, you know, many different types of people. You know, it's a combustible mix, like you can say.
At least one prisoner here is Canadian. His name is Muhammad Ali. He's from Mississauga and has been pulled out of his cell to speak to me. He admits to being an ISIS fighter.
And you were a sniper?
Yeah, I was trained to be a sniper, yeah. Also was on a recon team.
Do you believe that they have the power to come back in the force that they did before?
Okay, this doesn't take a rocket science or a genius to figure out what's gonna happen in the future in this area, you know? It's a vicious cycle of war.
Does that mean, yes, you believe that they could?
I believe they could. I believe other groups as well. Maybe groups which are much more hardcore than them.
These prisons have been described as mini Guantanamo Bays, breeding grounds for extremism. And ISIS wants to break these prisoners out. In 2022, they orchestrated a massive prison break. It took the Kurdish forces 9 days to regain control with the help of U.S. airstrikes. More than 150 Kurdish soldiers were killed in the battle, and 400 prisoners escaped, including suspected high-ranking fighters.
Jailbreak attempts like the one in January 2022 may very well happen again.
Ian Moss with the U.S. Bureau of Counter-Terrorism issued a warning in 2023 to countries like Canada who have refused to repatriate its male citizens.
10,000 ISIS fighters remain in custody there. This is the largest concentration of detained terrorists anywhere in the world. If they escape, they will pose a threat not only to northeast Syria, but they'll also pose a threat to our homelands.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a similar call in September of 2024. Ilham Ahmed is one of the most powerful politicians in northeast Syria.
It is imperative that these individuals be repatriated. Their presence here is illegal, and they have no rights under our laws.
The region's foreign affairs minister has for years been pleading with countries, including Canada, to take their citizens home.
What does Canada say to you when you say, take them back to Canada and try them and deal with them? They're your problem, not ours.
Canada has not responded to our request to take back its people, and we are unaware of the reasons for this delay.
The U.S. has been at the forefront of repatriating its male citizens, taking home all 27 American detainees, 10 of whom were later charged with terrorism-related offenses. Canada has brought home none. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, has repeatedly refused our request for an interview, and so we showed up at a media availability in Toronto.
Counterterrorism experts, U.S. Secretary of State, and Kurdish officials are urging governments to bring their male detainees home. Why has Canada not repatriated its male citizens?
When you decide to join ISIS and you leave the country and you go on the other side of the world, well, then you have to bear responsibility for your decisions.
And so they are not innocent until proven guilty. And And while the government won't repatriate men, it has brought home dozens of so-called ISIS brides and their children. Some have faced terrorism charges on their return to Canada. Others are being monitored with peace bonds after spending years languishing here. In an outdoor prison called Al Hol, in squalid conditions, a breeding ground for a new generation of extremists. The children behind the wire have had no access to the outside world for years. They see us as the enemy. Watch the little boy in the red shirt repeatedly run his hand across his throat. They yell that we're infidels and then bombard us with rocks.
Look out!
You forget. Look how close that came. We have evidence that some are even training to become ISIS fighters. We've obtained video that was confiscated of children inside this camp prepping for battle. The second facility, called Raj, is considered less extreme, safe enough for us to enter the foreign section.
Where are all the grown-ups? Hello. Hello. Do you speak English?
Yes.
From Canada.
I'm
Amatolov from Russia has been in detention for 6.5 years.
And how many children do you have?
I have 4 children, and one was deported to Russia.
One was sent back to Russia?
Yes, I sent him back.
Russia agreed to repatriate her son to live with his grandfather, a decision Amatolov made because when boys turn 12, they're removed from their mothers, and they're taken here. This is a de-radicalization center, where they try to deprogram extremism through classes and sport.
From Johannesburg?
Yeah.
This boy is from South Africa. He takes me to the room he shares with other boys whose parents are either dead or in prison.
Which is your bed?
It's over here.
This one?
Yeah.
So you're now 18, right?
Yeah.
Have they told you what will happen to you now?
No.
You don't know? But you'll be able to stay here?
I don't know.
18 is a cursed birthday for boys here. They age out of this center, and if their countries won't take them, they're either sent back to the camps or to prison.
What do you dream about for your future?
Dream?
Yeah.
Nothing. I don't want to let you. I never dream about nothing. Yeah.
You don't have a dream for your future?
Dreaming of the future has been difficult too for Sally and John. One glimmer of good news, they're about to see their son for the first time in years.
So as much as I want to see it, I'm terrified. So let's go.
John Letts in the UK and Sally Lane in Canada are about to lay eyes on their son for the first time in more than 7 years. I set up my computer to show them video messages from my interview with Jack.
God, he's a man now. Oh my God. God, he was just a boy when he left. Oh, Jack, he's got a beard. Oh my God.
It's from my dad. He always says, you're a Letts, you have to be patient, etc. So tell him I'm proud to be a Letts, and that I'm happy I'm a Letts. And that he did what he could and he raised me well.
This is my little boy.
I don't know, I used to think a lot about the future and what might happen, but it's like being in a desert. Every time you come to a dune, there's another dune after it, so I stopped thinking. It was a lot easier.
Jacko. He's his eyes are hollow. Sorry.
I never forget her. And it sounds weird, but I feel sort of honored that I'm her son. When I speak to people, etc., I'm proud of her. I know that sounds a bit opposite. So I'm proud that she's my mum. She's pretty cool.
Oh, that's incredible.
I'm so glad to see that his brain's intact. He's sunken, he's obviously malnourished.
I'll never ever forget what she's done for me. Whether I leave here or not, whether I stay another 10 years here or not.
Until I die, I'm going to try to get my son out. What else can you do? It's what a father has to do. It's what a parent has to do.
If I don't see him before his 30th birthday, I have missed his 20s entirely, so that's my goal. He has to come back. You can't live without hope.